Welcome to the Sportsman's Voice podcast, your inside connection to the outdoor legislation. From the Beltway to policy happening your way, we're covering it all. I'm your host, Fred Bird. Join us as we explore public land access, wildlife and fisheries management, Second Amendment rights, the triumphs that shape our nation, the sports we all love, and the stories that fuel our passion for the great outdoors. This is the Sportsman's Voice podcast. Have the opportunity to have Secretary Sheahan in and our own Mark Lance to talk about all things Sportsman's Paradise in Louisiana, touch on some of the victories that Mark and in-state partners were able to secure. But welcome, Secretary. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Sportsman's Paradise. Some of us are going to go out next couple days and experience that. Well, maybe not all that Louisiana has to offer, but we're going to get some of it, a flavor for it. Um, Tell the audience that may not know or never been to Louisiana, why is it the Sportsman's Paradise, and why should people come down here to enjoy the outdoors?
Yeah, we're really excited to be the host of this year's conference and being able to be the Sportsman's Paradise. There's really no place better for the Sportsman's Caucus to come and really see what we have to offer. So at the department, we manage about 1.7 million acres of land. We've got some of the best habitat management in the country. We've got some of the best game wardens in the country, biologists, and you name it. And they manage and take a lot of pride in the resources we have here in Louisiana. And so we're really proud about the fact that we get to be the Sportsman's Paradise. Some of the best duck hunting you can find, fishing, and so anytime we get to share that and talk about it's really the best part of my job that we get to come out and do this and share it with other folks. And so Sportsman's Paradise is we've got some great red snapper down on the coast. I don't know if anybody's going to get the chance to go out and fish this week, but we've obviously got some fantastic fishing as well as some great hunting. And so just opened our deer seasons throughout the state. We manage off of a deer map program. And so different parts of the state open at different times. And so we're kind of all full go on our deer program. We've also just opened duck season in our split in the state. And so we're kind of in the busiest part of the year. Thanksgiving is our busiest hunting week. So we're heading into that right now. So it's really a great time of year to be here.
Yeah, sounds it. And more recently, we reported on a victory at the state level in introducing black bear to the state of Louisiana for the first time in Mark, how many years?
Since the late 1980s.
Yeah, that's pretty remarkable. Just Mark, talk about that, how that all came together, and the ability to celebrate that victory.
Yeah, and I'll really turn it over to the secretary to talk about it as well because it's one of the best conservation success stories, not only in Louisiana but really in the country.
Sure.
Black bears were placed on the Endangered Species Act list after they were almost hunted to extinction. They're right there after the 1980s. The department, along with a lot of private landowners and so many other stakeholders, came together and said, "Hey, there's a problem that needs to be fixed here. What can we do to work together to bring this species back?" And over the course of the past 40 years now, it's good to see that Louisiana finally has a sustainable population to offer a very limited black bear season.
Where is, Secretary, that those wildlife management areas that people could, I guess, a lottery draw for?
Yeah, so if you're specifically talking about the bear season, so we have a bear map as well, and we use that to kind of base our bear management. So back in the 80s, we reintroduced bears into 3 or 4 different areas throughout the state and really highlighted, the importance of having landowner partnerships, a lot of our private public partnerships, because, and we've said this, all week on stage of the fact that we are only as strong as our partners, and the partnerships that we can create as a department to maximize conservation is how we're going to make the most impact. And so our landowners are really a key part of that, this public private partnership that we have throughout the state. And we introduce bears into 3 or 4 different areas throughout the state, and that's where our highest populations are. And we currently view that we manage about 2,300 bears throughout the state. We see them in all parishes in Louisiana. If you're one of those more concentrated areas, you think there's bears everywhere. If you're in one of those other parishes, you think there are no bears. And so we're kind of always battling the public intent of what they want and what they want to hunt. And we felt that we were at the point in which we could get to a bear season, and specifically in our Bear Area 4, which is where the hunting season is going to take place here in a few weeks on December 7th, is that that bear area was our highest population. That was the first introduction back into the state. And those landowners were really kind of hitting the max because as hunters, we kind of, and really as a legislator or a secretary, what we see most is that the public can only tolerate so many of these species to be out there, but also the demand of the hunter and the public. And so we're trying to kind of always balance that we're not going to make everybody happy, but what we can do is make good decisions. And so we're kind of all the time kind of balance that need and that ask. And so what we found is that Bear Area 4 was our best population to be able to sustain the season. We did 10 lottery tags based on land ownership as well as public ask. And so half of those tags went to landowners. And so we set a requirement that if you were somebody who essentially helped us kick this program off and you owned so many acres of land, you could put your name into the lottery because that is who is the strongest partner in this effort. And we wanted to make sure that we could thank them in some way through this random lottery process. And so if you own so much land, you're dealing with these bears more than anybody else. That we wanted to make sure you had the opportunity to manage these bears on your property. And with the population only being able to sustain what we believe to be 10 females being killed, we're asking that male bears get killed, but obviously there can always be that difference of sometimes females end up getting killed.
And Secretary, you and I were talking about it the other day too, but y'all had several thousand applicants to secure those 10 tags, and a lot, all of that money goes back into bear habitat management and the sustainability of the species.
What's the cost of the lottery entry?
So the way that we set it up is we required a lottery entry and then a bear tag as well. And so we wanted to make sure that we kind of balanced again the cost of conservation, which sometimes is a much bigger cost, to also make sure everybody had the opportunity to hunt and fish. So if you're a lifetime license holder in Louisiana, it was a little bit cheaper than if you are not a lifetime license holder. And so for the cost for the average person was about $75
Wow.
to be able to get into this. And if you look at states like Minnesota or Maine or some of these other states that have large carnivore hunts, this is really our first large mammal hunt that we have in the state of Louisiana. That number is relatively low compared to what most states get. But what we wanted to do is make sure we provided the opportunity for as many people as possible to get in that. So with the landowner tags, we also had our wildlife management tags as well as public tags. And so we ended up having, 10 tags total go out. And of that, we had a couple thousand applicants from all over the state. And it was just in state folks that could apply for it because they're really the ones that have done all of the work to get the species where it is. So we didn't want to invite outside folks to come in. We want to get to that point, but we're just not there yet in that first season.
To be clear, the $75, was that just for everybody? Or if you got drawn, it was the entry fee for the lottery plus your tag?
So that's everything. So now those landowners are set and good to go, or those tag holders are and good to go. It's just a one-time payment. What we didn't want to do is have to go back and ask for more money for somebody else who needs a tag. We also conducted a class, which obviously comes at a cost of making sure that folks know exactly what they're interacting with and what they're hunting, and kind of balancing that as well.
I guess what I'm driving at is to Mark's point that you guys obviously were able to raise dollars to go back into that management program. So even if you didn't get drawn, you can take solace in knowing that the funds you put in to be part of that lottery are going to a great place. So, and we talked about people being conservationists, and so many people say, well, I buy my hunting and fishing license, I'm a conservationist. Well, you're participating, but you need to have more skin in the game. And this is one way to do that, to actually contribute directly to a management program for something that's a great success story, like you were saying. I don't want to make the whole thing bear centric here, but I got a couple more questions on the bear because it's fairly new, I guess, to a couple generations. What was the education? There's got to be an education on it, because if you're trying to get boars taken off the land and not those sows, obviously there's nuance to that. And if you're not familiar with that, I think, quite frankly, because I'm in the Northeast and I hunt Maine, they're probably the hardest animal to judge on the ground. And it's not super easy to tell. I mean, unless a sow's got cubs, it's kind of hard to tell. So how are you guys trying to achieve those goals? And what are you telling your bear hunters?
So what we did is we required that everybody who got drawn for the tag, so essentially all 10 people had to go through this class. We partnered with Safari Club international SCI to be able to make sure that they were obviously an integral role in this whole thing, and we wanted to make sure that they kind of had a seat at the table still. And they obviously have a lot of knowledge in these things, and so we wanted to make sure again those public-private partnerships are where our strength is. And so we wanted to make sure that we were able to educate everybody from, we've had battles with CWD here, and it's in those areas. So whether you could bait or not, we wanted to make sure those hunters were educated on what they could use and what they couldn't use. We also wanted to make sure that there's a firearm safety component in that mix of things, as well as kind of just a basic hunter safety. And so we wanted to make sure that everybody knew exactly what they were getting themselves into, but then also kind of having those conversations of how you're going to identify animals once you're out in the field. And we obviously have a big pig problem in Louisiana. So there's, you know, this entire big factor of, what you're really going to interact with when you're out in the field if is this somebody who necessarily isn't a big hunter or a big game hunter. And so we kind of started that education of, you're going to see a lot of bears. We want to make sure that you're shooting some of the bigger bears that we have here on the properties, and we want to make sure that, you don't shoot a bear with cubs, and you want to make sure some of those things and what to look for. And some of the facial features are a little bit different. The sizes obviously are different. Our male bears here in Louisiana, some of them are huge. We went out to the field a few weeks ago and did a collaring effort. We still collar a lot of bears here. We still den a lot of bears here, and really try to track that population. And we had a 600-pound male black bear in the trap when we got there.
It's a big bear.
Yeah, it's a very big bear, and the intent was there was a female in that area about 300 pounds. The intent was to go collar her and then measure and take care of her cubs, but that wasn't necessarily what we got ourselves into, right? And so we're trying to practice that educational component to make sure that everybody knows kind of the difference in these bears. And we definitely don't want anybody killing a bear with cubs, but we also recognize the fact that this is a new process and obviously mistakes are going to be made, but we want to make sure that everybody has a enjoyable experience as well.
So are all methods, this will be my last bear question. Are all methods available, dogs, baiting, or is there still hunting in certain areas and baiting in certain areas?
So no dogs,
No dog.
and we're allowing baiting in certain areas. So in our CWD protocol areas, there won't be any baiting,
Okay.
but in the other areas, there will be. I shouldn't say there won't be any baiting. You can use glazed donuts,
Mhm.
if you're going to stop at Krispy Kreme on the way. But other than that, we don't want corn or anything like that that could then go into the deer population and, manage that. And so we have kind of put all that educational component out as well. Uh, we only have select dog hunting in the state of Louisiana in the first place, so we didn't want to bring that into the pair. The idea is that it's a stationary hunt for whoever does it. Partly a safety component, partly again that identifying component, right? We're dealing with. We want male bear shot over the females, just because that's how we're going to sustain our population.
I think both methods, in my experience, allow for that selective process and practicing that good management. If you treat a bear, you can look up and first of all, if it's got cubs, you're going to see those cubs and oh, that's cool. You got kind of inconvenience the bear, walk away. But if you got a good quality boar and that's what you're looking to take up, there you go. Same thing with the barrel and then the bait side. You can use that as a point of reference. Okay, is this a sizable bear? Is this a mature bear? Which exactly you were talking about. Well, that's great. It's good to have those opportunities. Go ahead, Mark.
Before we move up the black bear conversation, too, I would like to commend the department and the commission on y'all's thought process and how you've handled this. This is a perfect example of the North American model of wildlife conservation in action and using science-based data to make informed decisions.
You're absolutely correct, and I appreciate the praise because, Louisiana and the Endangered Species Act is not, a new partnership either, right? So we've gone through reintroducing, obviously, the black bear. The American alligator is the epitome of a success story of getting something off of the endangered list and then moving towards a hunting season. And, we also have reintroduced bald eagles into the state of Louisiana. We've introduced turkey. We've reintroduced quail. We've reintroduced deer to some extent in certain parts of Louisiana. And the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries is the one of the only, and if not probably the only department in the country that has managed to get something not once but twice and three times off of the endangered species list. It's almost unheard of. And so all of our funds go to efforts that, whether it's an exploratory exhibit with our whooping crane projects right now, or reintroductions of some of these other crane species that we're working on, and being able to maximize our effort. Like, we are the example of what conservation is, and we're very proud of that. And every day our goal is to truly serve the sportsman's paradise. And we make a conscious effort, as somebody who hunts and fishes. I want to make sure that we have as many opportunities to do that in the state. So we're always battling and trying to make sure that what our management practices are, they match an active management of species to hunt it. We're not trying to take away hunting seasons, reduce limits, or anything like that. We want to maximize it every opportunity we get.
Absolutely. Louisiana boasts some great fisheries, inshore, offshore. We had Chris Horton and CCA in here recently talking rigs to reefs. That program there that CSF champions and acknowledging the ecosystems that these old uh, oil rigs, golly days, it escaped me. Oil rigs present and what was never there and is now there, and there's a whole industry, ecotourism set up around that and contributes to the quality of the fisheries. Talk about that. What people can coming to Louisiana can come to expect. You mentioned red snapper, and to Louisiana's credit, and Chris and I have talked about this in the past. The way the Gulf states and Louisiana specifically are able to survey and have a better idea of how many fish and the population of fish you have to set your seasons. It's a far better model, and wish the people up and down the East Coast could implement the same thing and not just relying on the feds. See Florida one day, red snapper season, right? You guys are doing it right.
Mhm. Yeah, so we have a program called LA Creel, which is really the national standard of how you should fish. And we're very proud of that program. And a lot of states have been working to adopt it and use that model, because what we did, and I'm a strong believer that, as a Republican, as a conservative, I always tell people that, the other side doesn't necessarily have a monopoly on how we talk about conservation. That us as the state is much better of a manager of our resources than anybody in Washington, D.C. will ever be.
Indeed.
That we know exactly what's happening, how it's happening, and that we should essentially have most of the management practices in our state. And I know that there are times when the Fed stepping in is helpful, but I would say more times than not, it's not. And so, as a department, we don't want to be managed or have restraints that the feds put on us. And so, what we did a few years ago is we said we have this LA Creel program. The current standard that NOAA uses is not good enough for the state of Louisiana. We have a new process. We can actively measure at the dock, using data coming in from our fishermen of what they're pulling in, from our guides, from our charters, and what they're pulling in. We can actively manage the pound per week. And so we went to Gulf States and said, we're going to start managing these species on our own. And we just want the feds to give us an allocation. We'll allow them to tell us how many pounds they want us to catch during our season, but we're going to actively manage our season. And what LA Creole allows us to do is to manage week by week of where that species is at,
Mm.
and allow us to track poundage. And this year, we actually had the longest snapper season we've ever had because of LA Creole. And so, what we did, which is at times not as popular, but in the long run, it really pays off. Of we're able to open and close the season as needed. So we were able to, again, looking at the demand of what the fisherman is asking us, right? We're looking at science, we're looking at what the fishermen are asking us. And what we were able to do is, on our high populated fishing weekends, we were able to open it up the week before the weekend and then the week after. But on those low propensity times, we were able to close it to then prolong our opportunity to hunt or to fish through Labor Day, to fish through Memorial Day, to fish through all of these dates that historically had been closed, and have the season open during the week while kids are out of school. But then once we go back into school, we shift back to the weekend to prolong it. So then you have the opportunity to hunt and fish with your family. And that's really what we're trying to do. And LA Creole now has been adopted by Puerto Rico, by most of the coastal states, and it allows us to really maximize again those partnerships that we have.
It's a great policy. Mark, since we have you in here, I know we're spotlighting Louisiana, but I do want to take the opportunity to talk about the relationship between CSF and the state agency and how that's bear has borne out fruit for all involved and to the benefit of the residents of Louisiana.
Yeah, 100%. We obviously have a great relationship with the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries. We've partnered with them closely on the black bear, like we just got done talking about. And we also were able to assist with passing House Bill 795 this past legislative session with the Louisiana Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus, led by Representative Jerome Zarang, to protect state agency funding so they can continue or protect state agency funding from the issuance of free and discounted licenses that the legislature would have passed so that we can continue this partnership, continue highlighting the North American model, and keep doing great work.
Mhm. Well, I think we have a fantastic relationship because what most people don't realize is that when we get model legislations from folks like you guys, we're able to then use that. And not always the cookie cutter doesn't work in Louisiana. It doesn't always work. We're okay with it. You're okay with it. We want to then adjust it and use that model in Louisiana because a lot of times everybody tries to reinvent the wheel to get a big win, but we don't need to. I've had the opportunity to work for Governor Nome in South Dakota, for President Trump, and everybody wants a big political win, but some people have done better legislation than we have. Governor Nome has put through some of the best wildlife conservation legislation that we've then taken and put in Louisiana now because the model is there. And Jeff Landry passes things that, Christy Nome is now doing in South Dakota. And that's the value of where these things come from. And then if you add another layer on top of that with folks like CSF, you guys are the ones who are able to go to every state. And then once every state starts passing it, well, now we have an across the board match that's not regulated at the federal level, it's regulated at the state level. So those nuances that apply to Louisiana that don't apply to Alabama or don't apply to South Dakota or Ohio, we're now able to adjust them enough so they work for Louisiana instead of having something that passes at the federal level that doesn't work for every state. But now you have to, work inside those constraints when you guys step in and help us pass those. Not only are we allowed to at that point reach across the aisle and get some folks on the other side. I mean, I think that bill was also supported by Jay Luno, who is a fantastic ally of this agency. And it doesn't matter that he has a D next to his name. Him and Zarang work together often. And I'm sure often they don't, right? But we want to make sure that we're able to maximize these efforts as often as possible. And you guys coming in allow us to do that on more times than one, not only with helping these legislators, but also when we need kind of lobbying help or funding help, that's exactly where you guys come in a way that we can't do it on our own.
And to your point that you just made there, with those two gentlemen being able to work together. I mean, that's the spirit of CSF, and that's really conservation. These are nonpartisan issues. I don't care, what letter is in front of your name. We all like a good, clean, natural space. We want to see robust populations of fish, of wild species that are game species and non-game species alike. And yeah, that right there illustrates exactly who we are in our partnerships on in state. So obviously, thanks for pointing that out. My last question, I'll let you both have parting thoughts, but as a self-proclaimed turkey junkie, and this audience well knows that, talk to me about the Louisiana wild turkey, your population, and how can we get Mark to help you get a fall season?
So we're obviously working on our turkey population every day. So there's parts of Louisiana that sustain very well for a turkey population, and then parts that don't. And that's where a lot of our management practices come in. You'll see in our northern WMAs, wildlife management areas, it's obviously very popular. We have good, dense populations there. The habitat is right for those species. But then on our coastal areas, you're not going to see it as much. Right around the same time we started working on the black bear, a few years earlier, we actually started the process of reintroducing turkeys into Louisiana because there was just so few. And so we've really turned into more of an active management of those species to look at more controlled burns because obviously that helps the turkey population and some of these other management practices that we can work on absorbing in the state to really be able to maximize those efforts. I do think that our turkey population is lower right now than we'd obviously like it to be. We want to continue to grow it. But we don't necessarily have the habitat that states like Arkansas have or, grew up in Ohio. There's fantastic turkey hunting in Ohio and Kentucky. But it's the same thing I always tell people about the deer population. The nutrients and the habitat to sustain a deer
Right.
population that looks like Kentucky, looks like Ohio. is very different than what you see in Louisiana. And so we're always kind of trying to balance again the ask of the hunter of being able to add those seasons instead of just a spring season. But we also, look at the best management practices and see how we can get there sooner rather than later.
I know some of my friends will call me when they hear this and bust on me about the fall season because we all have different philosophies on it depending where the species is challenged, right? A spring hunting is more advantageous than having an either sex opportunity in the fall. But nevertheless, I appreciate you entertaining that from a turkey junkie. Mark, parting thoughts from you?
No, I mean, we're happy to be in Baton Rouge. We're happy to be in the Sportsman's Paradise. As you mentioned, there's no better place to bring this conference. And I mean, it speaks to the fact that what we got over 330 registered attendees at this
I
point.
think it went further north than that, but yeah, it's a great
Yeah,
crowd.
which shatters our record
Mm.
at 275 in Bozeman, Montana, which is a very desirable place to put it as well.
Right.
So, like we've talked about, I mean, we could go on and on about the successes here in Louisiana and what all the department and everybody else has going on, but yeah, it's been great.
Secretary?
Well, I just really appreciate you guys having me today and really hosting in the Sportsman's Paradise. I tell people all the time as the department, we have a unique opportunity to work with kids and grandkids and parents and grandparents. And that's the same thing you guys get to do on a daily basis. And so really proud to be able to host everybody and be able to have folks down in Louisiana and look forward to seeing when everybody gets the chance to hunt and kill tomorrow.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for the partnership, Mark. Thanks for all your good work and appreciate you guys coming in.
Thank you.